These are the words of the Vero Press describing the theater grand opening in a special edition.
The opening of this splendid playhouse for Vero. Built primarily as a picture theater, it is designed and equipped to handle stage attractions as well. Beautiful simplicity is the dominant note of the theater interior. The walls are plain white, relieved at the top by a tinted frieze of art plaster. The floor is of concrete, elevated sufficiently to give every seat a commanding view of the stage. The lower floor will have a seating capacity of 635, and the balcony will accommodate 333, making the total seating capacity of the house nearly 1,000. A completely appointed stage, 50 feet wide and 23 feet deep, is equipped with a scenery loft and a complete set of scenery, painted especially for the theater by a leading New York firm of scene painters. Over the storerooms at the front of the building are 8 apartments, each consisting of a living room, dressing room, kitchenette, bathroom, and closet.
Originally the Vero Theatre, the name changed to the Florida Theatre and now Theater Plaza. The theater opened on October 20, 1924, playing The Hunchback. I was born in 1959 to Jack and Linda Metz, who are lifelong residents of Vero Beach. Our family has some unique connections to the early history of this historic theater.
We've been married for 62 years, and we've been together for about 66 years.
My granddad was James Hudson Baker, and he came to Vero after being approached by Judge Andrews to build him a home. Then, of course, he was hired to build many other things, and he was one of the 2 main contractors to build the Florida Theater.
I'm Bob Brackett. My family moved to Vero Beach in 1947. I was 13 years old at the time, and we came here. My dad came here to build houses. He was a contractor. So I pretty much grew up in Vero Beach, and at that time the town was much smaller than it is now, and the theater was kind of the center of the town, if you will. This building is built primarily of clay blocks, not like our concrete blocks today, but they're very sturdy, and lumber, heavy lumber. And so it's a great place to weather a hurricane. The building has been through a lot of hurricanes over the years since 1924. There was a major one in 1929. We've had some major ones in even recent history, 2004, 2005. I've told that you can hardly tell the wind is blowing if you're inside this building during a hurricane, and we still today allow the people in the apartments that have no place to park their cars during a hurricane to bring them inside to the old theater. When I was 15 years old, I actually worked in the theater as an usher. We also worked in the concession stand and did odd jobs, and I never thought about it until I grew up. But back then, the theater was pretty much run except a couple of positions by teenagers. We did the concession, we did even some of the film work in a projection room at times. Certainly ran errands, did a lot of the cleaning as well. Archie Adams was a manager back then, and later he was followed by Jack Chesnutt. Both of them excellent people to work for, respected you as a person that was employed, but also who you were. And it was just an interesting growing experience and good for our work ethic, I think, as we grew up.
I'm Alma Lee Loy. I'm a native of Vero Beach. I was born in 1928, and with the exception of some years when I went away to college, I've spent my whole life in Vero Beach.
The 17th Street Bridge was named for prominent Vero citizen Alma Lee Loy in 2012.
When I think about the old Florida theater, one of the first things I think about is when I was about 7 or 8 years old. We had to do our chores at home and get ready, and then we got to go to the movie in the afternoon. I remember very vividly that it cost us 9 cents. I don't know how I happen to remember that, but I do. As I got a little bit older, I was able to ride my bicycle and park the bicycle out front in the bicycle rack, and oh man, did I think I was grown up. Oh, gracious.
And our first date was here at the Vero Theatre, and we watched The Old Man and the Sea, and it was, it really and truly, I don't remember much of the movie. I was so overwhelmed by Linda at the time, and she, and you can see we're still together. My grandparents owned the Luther Hotel, and my grandpa Luther loved to come to the theater. And when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, he would bring us, he and I would come to the theater, and it was a very special treat. The main thing was in the summertime, it was hot. The Luther Hotel had no air conditioning, and it was a great treat to come down here and be cool.
In the early days, we didn't have any sound. They were all silent movies. Ladies come and play the organ, and they had certain music that they played right along with the movie. That was before my time. By the time I got to go to the movie, we had all kinds of, they weren't silent anymore.
The projection area had 2 projectors in it, dual projectors. You could load one and while the film was going on the other one, and vice versa. And usually manned by one person, usually a male in this theater, and they had a little restroom right next to it, to the projection office where if he needed facilities, he could use that restroom. So it was kind of a one-man operation. There was no air conditioning then, so that was kind of a secluded place. It could get very hot in the summertime, so there was actually a little window in the back that he could open up and get some fresh air in. But kind of a secluded place to work.
My paternal grandfather was one of the first projectionists at the Vero Theatre.
My father, Henry Metz, actually ran the projector, and he had to go to Fort Pierce to find out how to run it.
Despite blue laws in St. Lucie County prohibiting businesses on Sunday, the Vero Theatre management insisted on screening films. On February 15, 1925, sheriff officers from Fort Pierce stopped the show.
He was one of the 3 folks, Mr. Atkin and Mr. Frick and my dad, that were arrested twice on Sunday afternoon for showing the movie. From the Fort Pierce sheriff came to arrest them. And on the 3rd Sunday, they had free admission, and the story is that a lot of the church people came, and that kind of sewed it up.
We've had enough. That's what prompted a trip to Tallahassee. And out of that trip to Tallahassee, Indian River County became a county and separated from St. Lucie County, and we were on our own. and that was back in 1925.
I didn't know until I was much older that my grandfather played a part in this theater. He, interestingly enough, was a Mennonite, and I think that's why it surprised me so much. But I was reading my dad's diary and discovered that he and my dad came to the movies a lot. And apparently, he was very upset about the blue laws and what was going on with the blue laws and people getting arrested. He was on the delegation, one of the delegations that went to Tallahassee to cut Indian River County out of St. Lucie.
Daddy's little office was right there by the back door, and the back door was real close to the entrance to the theater. So I would come down, I'd help him, run errands for him, do whatever he needed, and then my time was free. So what I'd do is I would just slip out his door, in the door of the theater, take myself a seat, and watch whatever was going on at the movie, and then when it came time to be in the car, whatever time he said he was going home, I better be in that car to ride home with him. So that was another experience. I did that for kind of a long time, and I saw the bits and pieces of an awful lot of movies.
I would come in the 4th grade and after school and watch the movie, but I knew I had to be down at the courthouse by 5 o'clock so I could ride home with my mother, or she would be upset if I wasn't there. I couldn't just walk home unless she told me to. I remember looking at that clock many times for whatever reason. So I'd get out of the theater in time to do whatever it was we were supposed to do.
We only lived about 2 blocks from the Florida Theater, and so I could walk very easily and went practically every time the feature changed.
Back when I was growing up, you didn't have to start at the movie beginning. You could just come in anytime, which I did when I was on the patrol and came in after school. And you would just watch the movie until the end and then go through the cartoons, and then it would start over and you'd watch it to the point where you didn't see it before. So you saw it before and then you would just start, you could leave. And that's the way you did it, because I don't remember, it's not like now where you have to be at the theater at a certain time. You just sat through whatever was there.
The movies actually consisted of news, sports, and then the movie. And when it was over, if you wanted to stay, you got the same thing. You got the news, and you got the coming attractions. I forgot about that. But the sequence never changed.
I can remember on Saturdays, they always had what they called a serial, and it was a continuation from week to week, so we'd be excited to go the next week to see what the serial was going to bring. Well, I remember one that was called Fu Manchu.
Epic movies, they were very important, like Peter Pan when it came out. Gone with the Wind, the 10 Commandments.
We saw
all
those,
all the epics.
The big ones we saw, and they got, what do they call it? CinemaScope.
Yeah, exactly, a wide screen. You'd come in, oh my goodness,
they had
it
one
was
of those.
amazing.
Actually, this theater was used kind of like a meeting place, a community center for things that were going on. A number of things, like raffles, like events that would be philanthropic in that they would be a community event in order to help somebody. There were a lot of those, and that was a wonderful way for people to get together, and because people love to go to the movie.
Like many theaters of the era, this theater did not escape the stain of segregation.
The building was built in 1924, and of course that was before integration. Segregation was in full effect, and especially in the South. And in the balcony of this theater, there was a partition in the center of the balcony, a partial partition, went up about 7 to 8 feet high. And the black people would buy a ticket out front from the ticket office. They'd come around to the alley in the back, come in a little door in the back, and there was a little staircase that came up into the balcony on just the east side of the balcony. And they would come up here and sit. They also had facilities for restroom facilities, small restroom up here. And you could hear them on the other side of the balcony because white people were sitting on one side, blacks on the other, but you couldn't see them. That, of course, changed when integration came about.
I had to be probably 10 or 11 at that time. Said I made friends with Napoleon, and he went to the movies, and he would have to go through the alley entrance and go sit in the balcony, and I always thought that was not good, and but I always we always spoke, and I'll always remember Napoleon.
Hi, I'm Jack Chesnutt Jr. My dad was Jack M. Chesnutt. He was manager here at the Florida Theater for many years, along with the drive-in theater. Dad was like a fixture here in Vero Beach, and that in the evenings he always had his coat and tie on and was standing out front greeting everybody as they came into the theater. And there he knew just about everybody in town at that point in time, and because this was the only entertainment that you had. There wasn't any other theaters around to go to. My brother Fleetwood Chesnutt and my sister Joy Chesnutt Kennedy. We all worked for Dad here at the theater at one time or other, doing different jobs, mainly concession and that type of thing. Making sure the marquee got turned on at night, all the lights. We knew after church on Sundays that we had to come open the theater up before 1 o'clock.
Jack created a character he called Zobo the Clown, who performed for children at matinees and special events at the theater.
Kids would come in and bring cans, food, and that kind of stuff, and it was a 10 o'clock show in the morning, and we'd give away stuff, blow up balloons, make funny things out of them. Every year, the Police Benevolent Association, in conjunction with the theater, would have a midnight show for the graduating seniors after a senior all-night party that the PBA would put on to keep the seniors out of trouble and keep them occupied and that kind of thing. And I was a police officer here for 34 years, and part of my off-duty time I would donate to the Police Benevolent Association, and for those years that the theater was open and operating, we always had the senior all-night movie here.
The last film screened in this theater was Desperately Seeking Susan. The theater closed in 1985 in part due to competition from nearby multiplex theaters.
Buildings were in ill repair. Things were looking really bad for the downtown area. There was a little restaurant downtown that all the business people that were still downtown would meet for lunch. And the talk was the same every day. It seemed like everybody was kind of down in their attitude about what the prospects were. They would talk about all the problems that were downtown and how nothing was being done about them. And so one day when I went home, I told my wife, I said, somebody should do something about it, even if it's wrong. Somebody ought to try something. And then somebody up and bought the building. A couple of guys in town made an offer on the building, and they bought it for $78,000. And I thought, wow, that really went cheap, because they were asking over $400,000 when they were talking to me. But anyway, they bought it and they made a flea market out of it. They still didn't repair anything and didn't fix the building up. They just opened up the back and put a lot of junk and stuff in there, and people would go in and mill around, and it was musty and no air conditioning, and it was no better, and probably even worse than it had been when it was empty. Then one day, one of them came to me and said he would like to sell his 50% interest in the building, and he said he would take $75,000 for it, and so I agreed to that and bought half of it.
The remaining partner eventually agreed to sell his interest in the theater building.
And that was in 1989 that I actually purchased the building in full. So at that point, I decided I would try to fix it up in 2 phases. First, I would fix up the stores, the outside the building, the apartments upstairs. There's 8 apartments upstairs, and the lobby area. And the second phase would be the theater itself, which I was going to put off till later. And I hired Charlie Block, who has an architectural firm and also a building contractor. And he tried to get bids on some of the work, and a lot of the people in town, the craftsmen, didn't even want to bid on the building because they were so convinced that nobody would spend that kind of money in downtown, and they thought they would be giving me bids that they would take a lot of hours to work up, and nothing would come from it. And so, but we overcame that, and we started construction in 1990, and the building was finished in 1991. In 1991, at the end of the construction time, and when it was open, we had the apartments all furnished. It was a beautiful thing on the inside, and we invited all the dignitaries and all the people that we knew in town. About 500 showed up one night for the grand opening. We had a little 3-piece band playing and had refreshments for everybody, and all the building was open so they could go through and kind of kick the tires, if you will.
Glad everybody's here. It's good to have people in the building again.
We found 3 out of those 4 animals, and after copy and making the book, and no one has guessed yet which one is the copy. It was that well done. This lovely old camera.
Say something on camera. The building is just beautiful. Good response. Fantastic.
Everybody went through and oohed and awed, and they stood in the theater part that had not been done and talked about what a wonderful place it was. And it was great. We had antique cars out in the front, parked all over the front of the street, and it was a grand time. And then they all went home, and we sat empty for 2 years. I couldn't rent even an apartment for 2 years. A young man came along and rented one of the apartments. And then we kind of cracked the ice, I guess, and people started coming in and renting the apartment. And then we started renting the stores, so we got the stores all rented. Our idea was phase 2 was to be some more shops. And we actually had a rendering already drawn for that, which would have made a nice little double-decker shop area in the back. But at the grand opening, the people didn't want to have shops in the back. They wanted to make it into a theater. They all expressed that very openly. Everything from any kind of theater you can imagine, a movie theater, even one guy wanted a burlesque theater. And they all wrote notes down and gave us all this information. So we thought, well, maybe we had it wrong. So maybe we would just junk the idea of the shops, and we would somebody would make a theater someday out of it. And the theater is not a profitable operation, generally speaking. A community type theater isn't. And so that was going to be somebody else's project. Now, some 25 plus years later, and numerous groups coming and trying to accomplish that, it's still sitting empty.
Theater Plaza was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in April 28, 1992.
A lot of nostalgia, just unbelievable nostalgia looking at the building here. And of course I remember all the red walls from the curtains that they had on the walls. And everything is just, it looks smaller with no chairs, seats here and all. But it's something else. Remember, I can visualize the old clock that was on this wall. And the stage, it's pretty much same size as it always was. Unbelievable. And it's just terrible that they had to strip it down to bare wood here now.
Remember the ceiling?
The ceiling had the metal ceiling up there and we had a big chandelier, big round one, almost the size of that air conditioning vent, that actually would come down on a pulley so they could change the light bulbs in it. That's one of the things I remember. The stage, and this is where I was Zobo the Clown. He would go up and down the steps. He'd do some of the stuff on stage, and a lot of it was hands-on right with the kids. And the right where that piece of hose is there was a little bit of room between there and where the first row of seats were. I hope they can do something with it and somebody can get some real enjoyment out of this theater. It's like the Van Coy in Fort Pierce. It was redone, and I hope they can do the same thing here.
This was your dad's life.
It was for many years. He was here every evening, pretty much. He was off on Wednesdays. Wow, and it's just unbelievable. A lot of time, a lot of effort, and there's a lot of love in this theater.
My name is John Aruffo. My wife and I are retired physicians. We moved to Vero Beach several years ago. One of the things we love about Vero Beach is the small town atmosphere that's returning to the area surrounding the theater plaza. My connection to the theater has been as a newcomer and an observer. When I retired to Vero, I returned to an activity I did before college, which was pottery. I sell my pots locally at the Flame Tree Clay Art Gallery across the street from the Vero Theater. Over the past few years, I've found myself wondering what will become of the Vero Theater. I'm now becoming more than just an interested observer by joining the Cultural Council of Indian River County. My son Anthony, who's associated with the Vero Beach Wine and Film Festival, first showed me the property and described it as a perfect venue for the festival. Bob Brackett and his family had the foresight to renovate and restore parts of the structure. More recently, individuals in the community are considering what role a renovated theater would play in revitalizing the historic downtown area of Vero Beach. The least intensive option would be to do nothing. This could result in deterioration of the theater beyond the point of successful restoration. At the other end of the spectrum would be a complete renovation restoration, expanding its use beyond movies into theater, music, and dance. A renovated theater in its enhanced glory could help downtown Vero reinvent itself as a destination for the performing as well as visual arts.
It is perhaps ironic that the Sunrise Theater in St. Lucie County, the county Vero citizens fought so hard to leave in 1925, has fully restored their historic theater The Sunrise, which opened 1 year prior to the Vero Theatre, is described now as the crowning gem in the cultural crown of the Treasure Coast. It is currently owned and operated by the city of Fort Pierce.